Welcome back to Talk a Game Podcast. We are finally here, ladies and gentlemen. We are finally here. The end of the regular season has completed. We are in the playoff time. And there's a lot to kind of talk about before we get there. We're going to run this podcast a little bit differently today. We're going to run through Black Monday firings, as well as open head coaching positions in the NFL. We're going to go ahead and do all the awards from this season, our playoff power rankings, a little bit different, and then finally our wild card predictions to end it. So, like I said, we're finally here. We're finally at the playoffs. Uh, kind of a lackluster week 18, like we all knew it was going to be, but everything's set, solid. We're in place. I think we have probably the most diverse playoff teams I've seen in a lot of years. A lot of teams that were not expected. We'll talk about all those guys here soon, but I think we're in for a great playoff season. I think I don't sit there and say I'm going to miss out on any game or want to miss out on any game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a really cool playoffs because you really don't have like two powerhouses in each division. I know a lot of people are going to say the Ravens and Niners, but those teams, at least the Niners, have looked beatable at certain points throughout the season. And if you can get points on the Ravens defense, then yeah. But overall, it's kind of a crapshoot of if you get hot and you just get a 3-game win streak in the playoffs, you can win it all. There's no, it's not like last year where you had like, the Bengals, the Bills, and the Ravens and the Chiefs, like all these juggernaut teams. Kind of feels even keel across the boards, which is going to be fun. It's going to be pretty cool. I think we'll have an unexpected Super Bowl winner this year, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's wide open. Outside of maybe the Bucks or maybe outside of really the Bucks. Any other team? Well, maybe
Bucks,
the Pack.
Eagles,
There's a few teams that would surprise
Browns,
me, but
Texans,
honestly,
yeah.
I say 75% of teams are in the playoffs. I would not be shocked if they made the Super Bowl. A lot of these teams that are fringe teams that just made it are on some great runs right now. So we all know coming into playoffs with momentum is the most important thing. And we all know there's some teams on the board that we'll talk about that do not have that momentum. So we'll jump right into it. Like I said, regular season's ended, and we all know what that means. It's Black Monday. We had some guys let go. We had a shocker let go. Just to recap, we already knew about Washington and Ron Rivera basically agreeing to separate ways at the end of the season. So he was one of them today. Early on in the season, we had the Chargers as well as the Falcons, Las Vegas Raiders. Antonio Pierce has done a great job, so it'll be interesting to see if he keeps that. We got Carolina, and then the shocker today was Mike Vrabel and the Tennessee Titans.
Ooh.
Where the F did that come from?
Yeah, let's start off with the Titans one, because that kind of pissed me off. And I know one of my friends who's a Titans fan, he had tweeted out and he was like, this organization's ran by idiots. And I kind of agreed for a little bit. I was like, yeah, dude, like you got rid of the best coach that you've had in a very long time. And I get it, he had 2 seasons that were bad record wise, but I don't think anyone in that organization, players wise, had ever lost confidence in Mike Vrabel. And I don't think any fan did either. I'm sure there's always fans around there like, oh, the coach needs to leave and blah, blah, blah. But the majority of the tone from coming out of Tennessee was, yeah, we love Vrabel. Vrabel's our guy. We just need to get him, a few more draft picks, a few more solid selections, and retool this team together and go there. But when you get let go of a guy like Mike Vrabel, I don't know what direction that team's going to go. You don't know what direction they're going to go with quarterback. Will Levis had his moments throughout the season, but he did. I mean, you got a question mark there. I believe they drafted I forgot his name, Malik Davis, a few years back, and you had a question mark there. Tannehill's going to be gone. Derrick Henry's going to be gone. So you really need to find a head coach that is going to retool that entire offense. And let's not forget, this is the same front office that traded their best receiver in A.J. Brown. So very big question mark. I'm a big fan of Mike Vrabel. So I do not get what Tennessee is going. I feel like they're going to go full offensive heavy with their next head coach, but who knows? They have been the biggest surprise to me so far.
Yeah, I'm 100% disagreeing with the Tennessee Titans here, um, in the sense that it's frustrating because Mike Vrabel is a defensive head coach. We all knew that, and arguably he's had one of the best defenses in his tenure or 6 years there for a long time. This year and maybe another year before that being a little bit off keel, but everyone's always respected Tennessee's defense. So he did what he was supposed to do. Has
Mm-hmm.
he been hampered by some of the decisions the front office have made? Of course. So I mean, even in their statement, they're basically saying there's so many young talented player coaches out there that it'd be a shame to miss out on one. I, I think realistically, what they should have done is brought in a brand new offensive coordinator, someone that you knew is or know is a talent, right? And if
Mm-hmm.
that is not fixed by next season, then cool. Then Vrabel's on the hot seat.
Yeah.
Um, but I disagree in the sense that I actually think that Mike Vrabel is one of the better coaches in the NFL. Player coaches, especially, right? His players absolutely love him.
Yeah.
Um, and I think everyone is so gun ho on trying to find the next generational head coaching talent that this is something you and I have talked about before. Is head coaches to a certain degree only have so much power. And it's really what I look at teams is who's their offensive coordinator, who's their defensive coordinator. Those are guys that are scheming up things. Those are guys that have to run everything to the head coach. So those are guys the ones that have to have the mind and all of it, right? The head coach just basically has to sit there and execute game plans as they're given to him. So you have that in Mike Vrabel, and I don't know. I just feel like he's one of the better head coach. I think it's honestly just a big miss on their part. I don't know where he's going to go, but I fully believe he's going to land another head coaching job in the NFL. And it would be nice to see him just kind of put it to the Titans, right? Kind of do like an AJ Brown. You leave and you put it to him.
Yeah.
So up in the air, I mean, I don't even know who they're going to be targeting at this point. But when you don't have Derrick Henry, when you don't have a legitimate QB1, you don't really have wide receiver talent outside of D Hop, and we don't know what's going to happen with D Hop. I mean, whoever you're giving this head coaching position to, you're kind of giving them a very empty cupboard, in my opinion. So,
Yeah.
and maybe that's the route they're going. They're sitting there saying, all right, we're just going to implode. We're going to start anew, and we know where we're at. There's no point in trying to stick with a head coach that may have another decent season. We want to have a great season in the next 2 to 3 years. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, just to wrap up, if they go offensive minded, like you said, it's an empty cupboard. It's an empty, tool chest for them to build this team. And it's kind of setting up that coach for failure. You're not really giving that head coach a clear opportunity to succeed. I mean, depending on what they do in the draft, like there's a lot of chips stacked against that offensive minded head coach. So we'll find out what happens there. But I don't think anyone across the league, anyone that's a fan, is a fan of this firing. So yeah.
Yep, we'll see what happens there. I mean, yeah, I'm not really sure. So yeah, I listed off a bunch of other ones, right? And I mean, I think the Chargers made a decision they had to make. I mean, they literally had to make it, or else they're about to have full immunity on their hand.
Yeah.
Letting go of Staley, it was a great idea on their part. And also, I mean, for the Chargers, their talent it's there, right? It's just some of the game planning was just awful, and that offensive line is awful, right? Well,
Yep.
we all know that can change very quickly, season to season, right? It's fluid that way. I don't know. Do you want to talk about which one you're most excited about, or how do you want to run this?
I like team wise.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up there.
Sorry, most excited about team wise.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah. I think Atlanta and LA Chargers are the two teams. Well, yeah, those are the two teams I'm most excited about, only because they have the weapons already. Not completely 100%, but
Mm-hmm.
we'll look at the Chargers at first, right? You have a franchise quarterback. You have anchors there at certain points on defense as well. You have a pretty good secondary. You have some question marks when it comes for the GM to deal with the Bosa and Khalil Mack contracts and Keenan Allen, what you're going to do there. But since you have a franchise quarterback, you know what you can build with. I think it's almost penciled in for everyone in their minds that it's going to be Harbaugh, the national championship winner. And so him going back to the Chargers, where he played quarterback there for a little bit, it'd be kind of nice. It'd be a good reunion. And I think Harbaugh knows that he can do wonders with Justin Herbert. So that's
I
one.
think the only challenging part with the Chargers
Mhm.
is, like we talked about, the contracts that are coming up. But as of right now, they're projected to go $36 million over the cap. So you do have to make some drastic decisions. That means some key talent probably is going to be lost. Now the positive is, yeah, you probably have I think a top 10 or top 15 draft pick. I forget where they're landing. So that's great. You gotta have that, and you have all your draft picks, and you have your franchise QB that's locked into a contract. So the building blocks are there. It just worries me. Is this organization smart enough to be able to sit there and say, all right, here's who we're going to cut. Here's who are we going to go draft heavy? They may have to honestly bulk up
They will.
talent wise in the draft.
Yeah.
And I think whoever the head coach is going to be, they're going to have a little bit of leeway. And if it's Harbaugh, that's great. He's always proven that, he's never the kind of coach who's going to turn around one season. It's always that second season with Harbaugh. And the thing with Harbaugh too is he's as effective as his quarterback is, right? That's where his talent lies as head coach. He's able to bring the best out of the QBs that he has. And honestly, he doesn't have to do much with Herbert. The talent's already there. He's already developed. It's really just who he brings in if he is the head coach, offensive coordinator wise, defensive coordinator wise. If he can do what he did at Michigan, and here's the thing, everyone knows I'm an Ohio State fan, so watching Michigan win the national championship does suck. But here's one thing I'll say about that game from yesterday: is people don't necessarily appreciate the way that Michigan runs their team. They proved that in a college environment, which is a lot worse than the NFL, where it's strictly offensive minded, right? Literally, it's just put up numbers and shut up.
Yeah.
He literally proved we can run the board on every single team by playing solid defense and having an amazing running game. His QB only completed 10 passes last night, and they still put up 34 points.
Incredible.
So that shows me a head coach that understands the weaknesses in a system and can exploit it. And we all know what Harbaugh does. His resume is his resume, right? So I think that's yeah, I agree with you on the Chargers being an ideal spot. I actually have another
I think the
one.
last little tidbit for Harbaugh is he's coming from college. He knows all those guys. So if you're having to retool through the draft, he's going to be like, hey, we played that guy. Hey, I scouted. I tried to recruit that guy. For the next 2-3 years, he's going to know a lot of those guys coming out of college because either he played against them, coached against them, or tried to scout them and get them on his team. So that's a big advantage going into the NFL for Harbaugh. So it'd be interesting to see what Chargers do there. The second team I had mentioned was Atlanta. The Arthur Smith firing, man, I think a lot of Falcons fans are at this point where they're like, please just get rid of him. I think they were begging for it throughout the whole season, but I can respect the Falcons not letting him go in the middle of the season. But when you have Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, you have a big, tool chest there to build an offense. And if you find a guy like Ben Johnson who can figure out what to do with wonders with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta and Gibbs and all those guys, man, if he finds a quarterback for himself in Atlanta, sky's the limit there.
I don't disagree. Yeah, I think Atlanta's definitely an ideal spot for any aspiring head coach who wants to come put his stamp in the NFL. Another team that I think is actually probably the most interesting prospect for a head coach that is comfortable with a rebuild, not even rebuild, but comfortable with, taking on a team that's kind of depleted, but has a lot of future promise. That's the Washington Commanders for me.
Ooh.
Here's the reason why. They have brand new ownership. Josh Harris is basically trying to do everything different than what Dan Snyder did, right? He's fully committed and trying to get this team to a place where it needs to be. So you have full backing from your ownership, which honestly is the most important thing for a head coach. Yeah, you also have the second pick in the draft. You also have 5 draft picks in the first 100 picks. That's beautiful, right? If you're a head coach that's looking for, hey, I want to develop a team around what my philosophy is, this is your fucking team, right? Yeah. On top of that, and yeah, outside of all that too, they are now projected to have the highest salary cap in the NFL coming into next season, or open salary cap. Um, so, I mean, there's a lot of promise there, right? If you want to take on a project, but it's almost like you have a project, but you have half the answers, right? Someone's giving you the ability to kind of make it up on your own, or maybe it's like one of those tests where you're supposed to like write in the answer, so you can be creative as you want, right? There's no singular way of getting there, but you can kind of put your stamp on it. Now, granted, you are depleted heavily across the board, but there's some promises in the Commanders this season, right? I don't know. I don't know if Sam Howell's the answer, but the dude's a gunslinger. If you can develop him not to have turnovers, and you can give him an offensive line that gives him a little bit more time than he has, there's promise there.
Yeah, the Commanders kind of scare me because A, they're in my division in the NFC East with the Cowboys, but B, they did a very interesting move in bringing in Bob Myers, who formulated all those Golden State Warriors teams in the NBA.
Beautiful.
And he manipulated the salary cap and how he can get those guys there. Obviously, NBA doesn't have a hard cap. It's a luxury tax, so Bob was able to go over the luxury tax and get more players there. But when you bring in a guy that knows A, how to build a championship team, and B, knows how to work around a structured salary cap, that scares me. Because Bob will look at talent in the draft, he'll look at talent in free agency, and then on top of that, we know Ron Rivera is gone, but this could be Eric Bieniemy's chance to just take over. And that offense had sparks there where you just said Howell didn't look bad. And if they don't want to go with Howell, they have this one of the top 5 picks. They can snag a quarterback in that one of those picks too. So the Bob Myers thing is really interesting to me, just because knowing his background. So I'm really, really going to look at the Commanders offseason just for that reason.
Well, yeah, you bring in a guy that, I mean, he's a winner, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty is that they're literally trying to hire guys right now that are winners, right? Rather than sitting there and saying, this is a potential guy, right? This guy has potential. But no, we're going to bring in guys that know how to win. I agree. NFL's a little bit different than the NBA as far as salary cap goes, but the mentality, right? He went into Golden State and said, all right, we got to pay what we got to pay because we're going to assemble this badass team. And they had a good, they're still not bad in any which way. So, yeah, I think that's just an interesting point. I think the debating point is, do the Raiders keep Antonio Pierce as head coach, or do they explore their prospects?
I think they should keep him.
I think he's done enough.
Yeah, I think he's done enough. I think this is, man, it feels like a long time that I've felt that the Raiders fans have a coach they truly, truly love. And not only that they truly love, it's a guy that Pierce himself is the culture of the Raiders. And so I think they should stick it with Pierce. It sounds weird because we never had him on our radars in the years past or anything like that. He did a great job, like we said, stepping up interim head coach. But give him a full offseason, see who he brings in as coordinators or assistant coaches and players in draft. See how that goes first. You really have no pieces to build around. I mean, you have Max Crosby, who's your vet there, and Devontae Adams, but there's no young core to build around or anything like that. So let's see what Pierce can do. I think it's a fair point for him to have that argument. And like I said, he fits the team, and that's the most important part. He does fit the culture. He does fit the team.
Yeah, I mean, I know Harbaugh is also a name that's mentioned over there, so I could see why that could be a intriguing name to kind of go after. But I think the guy's done enough in his short little resume. I mean, taking over a really difficult situation, honestly. That team was in absolute shambles. So why not give him a chance? I know the naysayers are going to sit there and say, there's been so many examples in the past of, guys have taken over. Freddie Kitchens comes to mind, right, for the Browns, right? Had a great little run, then became head coach, and then, God, it was just awful. So I understand the hesitancy there, right? It's almost like, well, if we're going to start anew, let's start anew, right? Let's, why hold on to the past? But I think he has a locker room, and the locker room is all that matters. So the only other team we hadn't talked about was the Panthers.
Man, the Panthers have they have a lot of question marks there. You could go either way, defensively or offensively. I know a lot of fans are probably going to say, let's go offensively because I can never say his name. Jairo Avero. I'm sorry, I'm butchering that. He's done a great job as a defensive coordinator. I get the record doesn't show, but as a defense, they've been a pretty good defense. If he steps in and takes over, I think that'd be cool because the players know him, they like him. There's a little comfort level there. And I think he should be able to pull in his own offensive coordinator and just be like, hey, offensive coordinator, whomever it is, do the job. And I think a good one would be Frank Smith from Miami. McDaniels is offensive coordinator currently. We know McDaniels runs the offense, but bringing a guy like Frank Smith, who is familiar with the McDaniels offense and can get quarterbacks in creative positions to succeed, I think it'd be a good fit for Avero to take over and Smith to be offensive coordinator. We'll see there. There's a lot more work that needs to be done there draft wise. You got to draft a receiver. You got to draft some running backs, some linemen, and defensively there's some question marks there. But it's a little bit of a big retool for the.
It's a big project. I think the one downside is also ownership, right? We talked about last week.
Yeah.
Their owner throwing a drink on a fan. So it's just, and then on top of that, now as a head coach coming, you don't really have a long leash, right? They're not sitting there letting their head coaches kind of last long. So I don't know. I really don't know. If they're honestly hoping for a once in a generation head coach to come and turn their season around from where it was, I mean, I don't see it. I know they're going to sit there and look at it and say, like, oh, look what the Texans did. They turned it around. Oh, I mean, they drafted a hell of a lot better than you guys did.
Well, so they did their due diligence and they didn't, fuck around. I'm sorry for my language, but they didn't fuck around. Like they did their due diligence. They brought in a guy that knows the system or that knows the city, an ex-player, and a guy who's proven himself as a defensive coordinator for the Niners in DeMeco Ryans. So we'll see what happens there with the Panthers. I'm going to round this off lastly, although it's not a head coach firing, it's something that of a story that popped up today. The New York Giants. Did you see that story?
About Wink?
Yes. Do you know what happened with Wink and why he left?
I heard that he was going to be let go, but then I also heard that he wasn't let go. So I haven't kept up with it. So go ahead and
so the rumors is that they fired his assistant coaches on the defensive side.
Mm-hmm.
And Wink did not like that. And he blew up on Dable and just left. Yeah. That is, I don't get why you would do that. If you're Brian Dable or the Giants front office, your defense was the only shining point this entire season. And you're pissing off one of the better defensive coordinators, in my opinion, in the league. So don't know why you would do that if you're the Giants and Brian Dable, but I have done a complete turnaround on my opinion of Brian Dable, especially after this season. And I don't think he's going to last till next year. It has to be a big, big switch in production and performance from the team. But that's the story. Yes, they fired Wink's assistants that he liked and that he had brought on board and he vouched for without him even knowing.
Yeah, and how can you blame a guy? I mean, everything. Respect the guy basically sitting there and saying, like, I'm with my boys, right? Like, how are you going to do that to him? I mean, you're basically, you're handicapping the guy, right? You're basically telling a guy bring in what 5 new head coach or 5 new position coaches or 4 and then make it happen. So you have to build a whole offseason of continuity, having them learn your philosophy game wise or game plan. Like that's stupid, man.
Not a fan of that.
I'm trying not to hate the Giants because we have a Giants fan that we absolutely love, but I'm sorry, man.
I'll hate the Giants. I love the fan, though.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, so we'll move on to our end of season award predictions, or who we ideally would want. I think we'll start off with an easy one. I'm pretty sure we'll have the same answer. MVP.
Ooh, I got some controversy on this one, so I'm gonna let you go first.
Well, I think the consensus front runner, pretty much for everyone right now, would be Lamar Jackson.
Yep.
I I mean, yeah, there's other guys out there, but I think that performance he had 2 weeks ago with 5 touchdowns. I mean, that's if there's a way to cement something, that's a great way to cement you being MVP. So I'm curious, who else do you think has that ability to win this?
Yeah, so I had punched in my ticket before that Niners game to say that Lamar's my MVP, and just tooting my own horn, I was right there. But I get pissed off about this because we know it's a quarterback's award, unspokenly. But if you're going to give it to a quarterback, why isn't it the quarterback that's statistically top 3 to top 5 in every single quarterback category, stat wise? That's Dak Prescott. I know I know fans are gonna be like, oh, Dak, blah blah blah. Dak had a great year. He led the league and he's number 1 and number 2 in almost every quarterback stat. He's better than Lamar in almost every quarterback stat. And if it's a quarterback's award, my argument against Lamar would be Dak Prescott. And I think it's because he has a star on his helmet, they won't give it to Dak Prescott. I think he rightfully deserves it, but I also punched in my ticket for Lamar because I also think Lamar deserves it. It's just, it really comes down to Lamar beat Lamar beat Miami, Lamar beat San Francisco. He had those 2 games under his belt, whereas Dak Prescott could not. And that's really what it comes down to. But if we're looking at it from an outside perspective, the number 2 team in the NFC, statistically the best quarterback in the league with touchdowns and all these other stats. And if it's a quarterback's award, you would think, looking back at history, it would go to Dak Prescott, but it's going to go to Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I don't think it's Dak. I'll leave it at that. And no discredit to, I think he had the absolute best season he's had in the NFL. But my worry with Dak has always been the big games, right? How you win the MVP is based on big games, man. How you perform, like as much as people like, I understand the idea of going off stats and all that, but it's really it's MVP. Honestly, is an eye test. It's all it really is. It's how you look. I like, and the only other person I can sit there and say that may be able to compete with Lamar was actually Tyreek Hill, first NFL receiver to have 1,700 plus yards back-to-back seasons. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
I guess that's how I see the MVP is people just doing the unheard of, right? Or people coming up big. And every single time Tyreek has been asked to come up big, he always comes through. Granted, but everything doesn't run through him either, right? So I get how this is a pretty much almost always a QB award, but I do think they need to start looking at the facts that there are guys out there that are not QBs that are putting up ridiculous numbers, right? Things that are unheard of. So you have guys like Tyreek, and honestly, I think there are certain years where there should have been defensive candidates, right? But unfortunately, just like the Heisman, it ends up just being an eye test. And when you look at eye test, it's the guy who touches the ball the most. It's always the QB.
Yeah, and just to kind of solidify what you said, Lamar won those big games. Again, Dak couldn't. Everyone saw those big games. They were nationally broadcasted, so it's the eye test on those games, unfortunately for Dak. But I know Lamar is the MVP. I chose Lamar as MVP, but I think the Cowboys fans that do want to argue for Dak have rightfully so an argument.
Yeah, I can respect that.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be Lamar. So we'll go from MVP to actually an award that I personally love. It is the Comeback Player of the Year award.
Ooh, okay.
There's 2 guys that come to mind. Once again, both QBs. I have Baker Mayfield, and we have good old Grandpa Joe Flacco. I think both guys absolutely deserve this award. I think the nod probably goes toward Joe Flacco just based on what he's been able to do in a limited time. But I really honestly think if we're looking at an award, Baker played literally all season long, right, with the team that he had. Specifically, right, with the team that he had. He doesn't have an all-star defense like Joe Flacco does. He doesn't have a great offensive line like Joe Flacco does. And for what he's kind of gone through as a journeyman, team to team to team, and to come and actually, put Tampa Bay in a position where, Tampa, right? They didn't make. Oh no, they are in the playoffs. I'm sorry.
They're the wild card.
Yeah, team. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was thinking they weren't. that even more than that solidifies for me, right? That a guy that honestly, I don't think they actually expected much out of him this season. I really
Mm-mm.
don't. So the fact that he was able to do what he did, I actually kind of give the nod toward Baker.
I agree with you there. I totally get Joe Flacco's argument for that. Phenomenal. I mean, he got signed middle of the season, came in, took care of business, got that team into the playoffs. But if you look at it as the title of the award, comeback player of the year, Baker Mayfield was on the Panthers and the Rams last year, and it was a 1-5 record and a 1-3 record with both of those teams. He
Yeah.
finished this season with the Bucs 9-8 with 28 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. Not a bad season. And honestly, he was the reason a lot of times that they were in games, because sometimes the defense would collapse and Baker does some crazy shit that Baker does. I think deservedly so. Baker Mayfield should get comeback player of the year because not only did he put himself in that category, but he also gave the Buccaneers franchise some questions to be like, hey, maybe we should stick with Baker for another like 2-3 years and see what we can get out of this. And I think that's not a bad idea. I think he had a great season.
Yeah. All right. So we'll move on to offensive player of the year.
Ooh.
Who do you got?
My bias is going to jump in on this one. And I know there's two guys ahead of him, even on the Vegas odds. My offensive player of the year is CeeDee Lamb.
It's hard to argue that.
I totally get anyone that wants to argue Christian McCaffrey or Tyreek Hill. I totally get that. But offensive player of the year is CeeDee Lamb. Like the eye test is CeeDee Lamb. I get Christian McCaffrey was there. He shattered all these rushing stuff. I get Tyreek Hill was there. He was about shattering all these receiving records, or was on pace to. But at the end of the season, CeeDee Lamb jumped Tyreek Hill in some of those categories, receiver wise. And you take away CeeDee Lamb from this Cowboys offense, Dak Prescott's not in the MVP category either. Then, so for me, offensive player of the year should go to CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, like I said, it's really hard to disagree with that just based on these last 5 games, right? And they've had a brutal schedule too. Let's not forget about the Cowboys' schedule.
Yeah.
To end the season. So CeeDee Lamb, I think the odds are for him to finish third in that. I think that's kind of a travesty. I know I was kind of hyping up Tyreek Hill earlier, and I still agree with that. But I think Christian McCaffrey probably, if we're talking about guys that when they're not playing have an absolute just effect on a team, look at the 4 games or 3 games in a row that the 49ers lost midseason, right? When he was out. And then all of a sudden he comes back. You're talking about a quarterback that wouldn't be in any kind of conversations and shouldn't be, honestly, with Brock Purdy, but he was. It's because, man, you have an amazing talent in McCaffrey, right? The kind of guy that does it all, right? He runs, he catches, he blocks well, kind of the full epitome of everything. And if he's not there, we saw their offense kind of sputters. Because we weren't able to see that with CeeDee Lamb because he was healthy all season long, I would just, I think I'm giving the nod. I know he's probably the odds-on favorite regardless, but
my argument against that though is you're right. We didn't see games without CeeDee Lamb, but we saw games where he wasn't targeted, and you saw how ineffective the offense was. Whereas if Christian McCaffrey's not going, you have Deebo Samuel, you have Brandon Ayuk, you have George Kittle. If Tyreek Hill's not going, you have Raheem Mostert, you have A-Chain, you have Waddle. You take away CeeDee Lamb from that offense, it's not a moving offense. And that's just me. That's my opinion. But McCaffrey's the favorite. I totally get that. You take away Christian McCaffrey like we saw those 3-4 games, and it's not the same high-octane offense that the Niners have.
Yeah, if anything, even if he doesn't win this award, CeeDee Lamb, and it should not have been debated from the start, but it was, has 100% cemented his place as a wide receiver 1.
Yeah,
that should not even been an argument. I don't know why it was, but
it's
probably because of the bias toward Dak. That's honestly probably the reason why he wasn't considered that.
Bias towards the Cowboys in general, but thank you for the Raiders for drafting Henry Ruggs before CeeDee Lamb.
I'm not going to talk about Henry Ruggs, piece of shit. All right. We'll move on. We did offensive player. Let's just go ahead and move it down to defensive player of the year.
Man, this
You
one's
biased here too?
yeah, I wanted it to be, and it's tough for me not to vote for Micah because he doesn't get those calls that Miles Garrett or TJ Watt get, but it's gonna go to Miles Garrett or TJ Watt. I sadly would love to see Deron Bland win it. I shouldn't say sadly, but I would love to see Deron Bland win it. But sadly, if you look at the cornerback play throughout the entire season across the board, wasn't very many lockdown corners. So the interceptions are great to see. And you would think that when a guy gets that many interceptions that he would be defensive player of the year, or when you would think the guy that gets the most pressures in Micah Parsons, he would be defensive player of the year. But I think just the way the Miles Garrett was running and the sack totals he just kept getting over and over again, it's going to go to Miles Garrett.
Yeah, I think Miles Garrett is probably touted to win it, but I tip my hat toward TJ Watt. Miles Garrett and TJ Watt respectively have great defenses around them, but I think Miles Garrett actually has a far better defense than the Steelers defense. I also think that certain times awards end up being feel good awards too. And if you look at everything that TJ Watt has done for that team and how kind of devastated they are not having him in the playoffs, if anything, the playoff game they're about to have this weekend, I think right then and there you'll see exactly how much TJ Watt does mean to this team and how ineffective they can be without him. So
Yeah.
it's probably going to be Miles Garrett, but I think honestly TJ should win this. But,
Yep.
so be it. All right. We'll move on. Offensive Rookie of the Year. We have, honestly, this has been a really great rookie class.
Oh, yeah.
Across the board. I'll name off the top five. We have Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, Puka, and CJ Stroud.
I got to give it to CJ. I know Puka broke the record, and that's incredible. I think, though, when you look at it by position, it's kind of like the MVP conversation. It's a quarterback. I wouldn't say it's a quarterback's award, but the quarterback holds more value. And for CJ Stroud to come in and do that his rookie year and win games, and we saw without CJ Stroud how bad the Texans looked. I just got to give it to CJ Stroud, man. I mean, he just had a phenomenal season. I'm a huge Puka Nacua fan. I hate saying that it shouldn't go to Puka, and I hope I'm proven wrong, but I also think CJ Stroud rightfully deserves it. That's my opinion. Just super really quickly before you give yours, the odds, if you look at the players on the odds for Offensive Rookie of the Year, this is from Vegas Insider. This is a sick team, by the way. If you just build this team, CJ Stroud, Puka Nacua, Zay Flowers, Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Rashee Rice. Imagine if all those guys are on your team. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, do I think CJ is going to win it? Of course. But with Puka, I mean, no one expected jack shit out of Puka, right? He wasn't even in anyone's radar, right? And game one, he's like, all right, chip on my shoulder, I'll do what I do. And granted, yeah, is he benefited by having one of the best offensive minds as head coach and then also having a seasoned veteran and Matthew Stafford? Of course. But it's one of those things where if an opportunity presents itself, like it did for him with Cooper Kupp being injured, he took full advantage of that. And then even that, after Cooper Kupp, it's not like he quieted down. He was still a major part of that offense. And obviously breaking the rookie record is massive. So I don't know. I kind of tip my hat toward, the unexpected ones more than the guys that, I mean, we all know the QBs are supposed to be the ones that kind of get all the glory all the time. But I really, really like Puka. It'd be great if he won it. I just see CJ winning it. On a side note, the fact that the Lions have two guys in the running, I mean, they have drafted so fucking well the last 3 years. Last season, Aiden Hutchinson, right? Season before that, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, these guys have done and Penei Sewell, right? Like, they have drafted probably better than any other team in the NFL.
Very well.
And on top of that, it's not like they're drafting players to develop. They're drafting guys that they know are ready to go from the start. So I really...
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm saying I know we're talking about offensive player or rookie of the year, but if we could name off a offensive rookie draft class of the year, it goes to the Lions.
Yeah, I was just gonna say kudos to that team because we had question marks. Like, okay, take it back to last year. They're like, oh, why'd you trade Hawkinson? And then in the offseason, in the draft, they traded DeAndre Swift. Two of those positions, running back and tight end, that we're like, why would you trade them? Blah, blah, blah. And immediately no one's questioning those positions anymore. They plugged in Laporta, they plugged in Gibbs, and you're just like, wow, like they didn't miss a beat. And that's great GM and head coach being on the same page. And also Ben Johnson, kudos to him to being like, hey, give me him. That's what I want. So yeah, great drafting by the Lions there. But yeah, CJ Stroud, the last thing I'm going to say there is you said Puka was unexpected with all the things going on there with Cooper Kupp being hurt. I will say CJ really didn't have any weapons. They drafted Tank Dell. He was a rookie. Nico Collins was coming in unheard of, really. They brought in Schultz, and then it was bringing in Singletary. No one really expected CJ Stroud to go to this level first year with a whole bunch of, I don't want to say ragtag group, but a whole bunch of not household names. So that's where I tip my hat off to CJ Stroud.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to defensive rookie of the year.
Ooh. That is an interesting one. So there wasn't really a defensive player rookie-wise that jumped out week by week, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, it wasn't like last season. It wasn't like Aiden Hudson and Sauce.
Yeah, it wasn't like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not Devin Witherspoon. What's his name? Tariq Woolen.
Cool.
I have Will Anderson. A lot of Vegas odds have Jalen Carter. I personally have Will Anderson, just because, again, he ended up being that kind of anchor on the Texans defense. But my personal pick would be Kobe Turner for the Rams, who I mentioned last week. He has just been great. I know he has the luxury of having Aaron Donald next to him on the line, but just the gear that kid plays with. I'm a big fan of Kobe Turner, but I think it should be Will Anderson, even though he's not the favorite. Jalen Carter is the favorite. I think it should be Will Anderson.
Yeah, I agree. Just everything. I mean, everything runs through Will. I mean, plays come through him. Everything kind of runs through him on that defense. So to be a rookie and basically have full command of your defense, I think that's more than impressive. And as we know, early on in the season, that Texans defense is what carried them early on. So to have a rookie do that is very impressive. And Jalen Carter, obviously amazing draft talent, but he had a great defense around him already. So to see the Texans defense that wasn't expected to do much be the way they are, they're kind of on the wayside a little bit. But Will Anderson, I think both of us agree here. All right, well, we'll end with one last one. Coach of the year. There are a lot of candidates. This can go any which way.
God. The two that stick out the most to me are Stefanski and DeMeco Ryans. Which one gets it? I'm okay with either one. I can't pick. Honestly, I can't pick.
I like Dan Campbell, dude. This dude was one game away from losing his job last season. The absolute, literally definition of hot seat. And granted, yes, he has talent all around him, but I mean, the story behind him, the team that he has around him, the grit they have around them, the fact that we're sitting here saying that the Detroit Lions are a playoff contender, not just a playoff achiever, I think that speaks volumes. But I mean, yeah, I don't disagree with DeMeco Ryans being a first-year head coach and a rookie QB also making the playoffs. So
yeah,
Stefanski, I think that's where my AFC North bias comes. You did great, congrats. But adjustment-wise, right, the injuries left and right. You lose Nick Chubb's second or third game of the season, but you're able to supplement that with Jerome Ford. You went through a QB carousel for a few weeks and finally landed on Joe Flacco that's led you. So I could see why he goes Stefanski's way. I just wanted to be Dan Campbell, man. I love player coaches, and that is one guy I would definitely play for if I had the ability.
Yeah, 100%. I wasn't a Campbell fan when he got hired, but I will wholeheartedly admit that he's won me over, which means nothing to him. Um, but I just knowing what Stefanski had to deal with throughout the season, it was just very impressive that he had that locker room on the same page every freaking week. It didn't matter who was quarterback. I mean, he had Dorian Thompson Robinson at back there at one point,
Yeah.
but it, Jerome Ford even missed a few games, and he still was able to chug out wins. And it's more so credit to that defense and Jim Schwartz, the defensive coordinator. But Stefanski was the one getting everybody on the same page. As far as D'Amico Ryans, like you said, basically rookie quarterback, rookie class, young team. Not really anyone was expecting this, and the way he got that team, kind of like Stefanski. Every week they were on the same page.
Yeah.
Um, it's a great story for D'Amico Ryans as well. But yep, I got Stefanski on that one.
Okay. Well, that rounds out our predictions for NFL awards. Great year overall for Week 18. We'll wrap up the season by actually beginning our playoff power rankings. We're not going to go through all 14. We're just going to run through our top five. But the playoffs are here, so I am curious to see where you have everyone lined up.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go first. Obviously, number one kind of carries over from last week's power rankings for me is Baltimore. I don't think anyone's going to argue against Baltimore unless you're a San Francisco 49ers fan. And if you're a 49ers fan, I'm sorry, you're number two on my list. But yeah, I got Baltimore and San Francisco number one and number two. Number three is my Cowboys. I looked very hard at the playoff teams, and outside of Baltimore and San Francisco, I believe the Cowboys can be any one of those teams. So I have the Cowboys at number three. And then at number four, I have Buffalo. I know I know that's going to be very controversial, but Buffalo, it's just the way they closed out. They went from this season's a freaking shit show, and Diggs is going to leave and pissed off, and Josh Allen's not the guy, and blah blah blah. To they turned it around and finished 11-6 and won the division in a controversial game against Miami, but I like Buffalo at 4 in my power rankings, and then to round it off at 5, there was a three-way tie in my head at 5 between Kansas City, Miami, and Detroit, but I'm going to give it to Detroit.
Nice.
And this is solely based on health, although Sam Laporta is hurt, but we know Miami is lingering with injuries. They just signed 2 veteran pass rushers, and Justin Houston, and I can't remember the other one. So they're trying to replace the production from Chubb. And then as far as Kansas City goes, I know I had them in my power rankings last week, but there's not that same confidence in Kansas City in my heart that I had in years past. And I've seen a lot more of Detroit getting those gutsier wins and, some blowout wins as well this season. So I got Detroit at 5. So my power rankings goes Baltimore, San Francisco, Dallas, Buffalo, Detroit.
Okay. We relatively have the same. There's going to be a little shake up at the end. I have, obviously, the Ravens at number 1, San Francisco at number 2. That has not changed in the past few weeks. I actually have the Bills at number 3.
Okay.
I think they're hot coming into the playoffs, and that's key. They've had a crazy push. So the Bills at number 3. Josh Allen is, I hope we get good Josh Allen, not bad Josh Allen. We'll see. Followed up at number 4, I have the Cowboys. I think I had them exactly there last week as well. It's hard to kind of put them above, obviously, the Ravens or the 49ers. I just think that the Bills have a little more momentum going into the playoffs compared to the Cowboys. And then finally, at number 5, I actually have the Browns. I
Okay.
think that obviously them losing to the Bengals this week has probably taken a little luster off, even though they played their third string starters. But it's just a team that's been under the radar for a very long time, but they're entering the playoffs very much on a high, just as much as the Detroit Lions. But I think they have all the tools in place. We just don't know where Sam Laporta is going to be, and I think they have the nod there for me. So I'll have
Yeah.
Baltimore, San Francisco, Buffalo, Dallas, and then Cleveland.
Cleveland. Man, you had the Lions there this whole year, and then at the end, they get bumped out right at the end.
Yeah, well, prove me wrong. It's okay.
It's weird because I didn't have the Lions there at all, maybe a few weeks, but then at the end, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, give me the Lions.
It's close. That number 5 could honestly be between like 6 different teams, but
yeah,
I'm just gonna go with the one that has the absolute momentum on their side. So,
like I wouldn't
right.
have been surprised if you had said the Rams, because I even thought about the Rams there at number 5. I'm like, damn man, like that offense is playing great. Yeah, they're the only team that took the Ravens into OT and gave them a run for their money. So, in Baltimore, by the way. So, yeah. I could see the Rams there at 5, but yeah,
for sure. All right, so we'll go ahead and move on. We are finally here, playoff time, wildcard weekend. We'll start off with the first one. It is going to be a Saturday matchup. We have Cleveland heading over to Houston, hosting a playoff game, which I'm sure none of their fans thought would be possible last offseason.
Man, before we start, great stories so far in this super wild card weekend. Coaches playing their former teams, players playing their former teams. Just a great. Again, it goes back to what we said. A lot of unpredicted teams making it, or teams that no one really usually sees in the playoffs. So, and Cleveland and Houston are 2 of them. And with this matchup, Cleveland at Houston. Ooh, Cleveland manipulated the crap out of that Houston defense with the play action.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to go Houston.
Okay.
Play a team twice, it can get tricky.
It can. I just think that the Cleveland defensive scheme, no matter how you try to prep for it or see it, it's difficult to go up against. And then on top of that, it's no longer all right, we'll have a close game with them and we'll win. It's now you have to worry about their offense chugging along too. So it's gonna have to be CJ Stroud putting up points. Because that Houston defense is what worries me the most. It's not even close to the same level as the Browns. And I think if it's a close game, that goes to defense more than not. So I see Cleveland winning their first playoff game and God knows how long. So great matchup. Yeah, 2 teams. Like I said, no one probably ever thought would make the playoffs this season. So
we all wish Watson was playing. That's the only sad part.
Yeah, that'd be.
Actually, I'm not sad. Screw that guy.
Yeah. All right, moving on to a game that I think early on in the season we probably thought this would have been a AFC Championship game. We have Miami heading over to Arrowhead and playing the Chiefs. Ooh. I have no idea where I'm going to go with this one. I got to think about this.
I had saw that it's going to be very cold in Kansas City and potential.
Oh, yes.
So I'm going to lean with Kansas City. I don't think Miami is going to be prepared for that weather. It sounds stupid to say. I get Miami, like overall, is a better team this season, but I think the Chiefs kind of get lucky with the weather. Now I'm second guessing myself. Fuck.
Yeah. Well, you got what's the deal with Tyreek? Is he good to go?
Tyreek or not, if the weather isn't a factor, the better run game is Miami.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so I'm going to switch that. I'm going to go with Miami. Yeah, I'm going to switch that. Yeah, I said all this shit about the Chiefs, but if you give it to the run games, Pacheco versus the A-Chain and Mostert train, I'm going to go Miami. It's tough, man.
So Kansas City's kind of had a cupcake walk in the schedule for the last 4 games. So they haven't really been tested, but even so, with those cupcake games, they haven't really showed anything more than they should. So I agree. Yeah, weather dictates toward the run game, and then you have Tyreek Hill who's played in this weather. So it's not like it's gonna. The weather also affects catching, and we all know one thing that the Kansas City Chiefs cannot do right now is catch the damn ball. Yeah, dude, early exit for the Chiefs. Wow. Yeah, I got Miami too. Interesting.
I think the one thing, and I'm going to speak on your behalf, that we are not considering is coaching experience in the playoffs, and that might come back to bite the Dolphins. Reed knows how to get. Yeah, see, even you're like, oh shit. Reed knows how to prepare those guys, and that I would not be surprised. And also, the Chiefs have not played a away playoff game yet, so they have the luxury of playing at home again.
Okay. Yeah, I'll stick with Miami here. So we'll move on to Sunday. We have first game is going to be the Steelers heading over to Buffalo, and once again, a game where the weather may be a factor. There's a snow apocalypse happening up north right now.
Yeah, I think we could say this on three. 1, 2, 3.
Bills,
Buffalo. Yeah.
same thing. Yeah, losing TJ Watt, man. Playing a team in
That's
the
such a
Bills that are
bummer.
just surging right now.
Yeah.
Uh, Great for Mike Tomlin having once again another winning season. Has not had a losing season as a head coach, but you're just meeting the Bills at the wrong time, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, all right, moving on. Ooh, great storyline here. Storylines all across the board. Green Bay heading over to Dallas in a game that we hope that the refs call catches that are
Oh
catches.
God. Yes, the storyline is there. McCarthy coaching against his old team, the Green Bay Packers. It's in Dallas, and Dallas is undefeated at home. I'm going Dallas. There's no question mark there. The reasoning being, and this is me. I'm sorry, I'm going into analytics and blah blah blah. The point of winning here is if Green Bay runs the ball, they have an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the other aspect, I'm speaking for Green Bay, is Jordan Love does not get the love from fans. He had a great season. Great season. I believe he was third in touchdowns for quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not throwing it to CD Lamb or Devontae Adams isn't there. He's throwing it to Romeo Dobbs and Marion, I can't even say his name, Wicks, and Jaden Reed, who I'm a big fan of Jaden Reed. If Green Bay and Jordan Love just get the passing game going with the run game, that can be causing some issues. But Dallas, again, at home, the caveat to that is Dak throws the ball. I think he has like 2.5 seconds or something like that, snap to throw. And Green Bay's pass rush is it's like half a second slower. So if Dak's getting the ball out quick, like what we've seen all season, should be shredding up and cutting up that defense. That Green Bay defense on the secondary side has a lot of question marks and is very vulnerable, very easy to score on. So I think the Dallas Cowboys offense is just going to outpower that Green Bay defense. So I got the Cowboys.
Yeah, I think actually this game is going to be pretty close heading into half. But I think second half adjustments with the Cowboys has always been pretty great to see. It comes down for both teams' red zone offense, who can execute. If Green Bay can limit Dallas to field goals, which they will pretty much automatically have with Aubrey, you have a chance. But if Green Bay expects this game to be a shootout, benefit goes toward the team that scores the most points in the regular season, which is the Cowboys. So, like I said, expect it to be close early on, but I see the Cowboys running away second half with it as well.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to our night game. And oddly enough, let me just throw a little interesting fact out there. It is the game that has the highest price tickets out of all the divisional games this week, or wild card games this week. It is the Los Angeles Rams heading over to the Detroit Lions. I
Wow.
absolutely love the fact these fans want to go to this game. That is
I'm
bad.
happy for Lions fans. Yeah. I'm really,
That is
really happy for Lions fans. Um, it's kind of a bittersweet matchup. Uh, you're playing your old franchise quarterback in Matthew Stafford. And when Stafford was in the Super Bowl, I saw so many videos of Detroit fans rooting for Stafford, wearing his
uh-huh.
jersey. It was just so nice to see. And I think a lot of Lions fans are a little heartbroken that they have to beat Stafford to win their first playoff game in so many years. Um, that being said, I want to pick the Rams. I just think that offense can put numbers up and kind of pressure that Lions offense. Not to say the Rams defense is going to stop the Lions offense, but they don't have the luxury to stall out on many drives. And I think the Rams can keep putting pressure. And with Puka, Cooper Kupp, and Kyron Williams, who, again, is a rookie that the Rams drafted a year ago, they got a lot of promising tools and weapons there. So I'm going to go with the Rams.
I think another storyline you have
Actually,
is
sorry, let me change that. The Lions are in my top 5 power rankings. This isn't regular season. Yeah, let me pick the Lions. It's in Detroit. Sorry, I'm flip flopping, but I'm gonna go with Detroit. It's the Laporta things that's my question marks, but let me go with Detroit.
So another interesting storyline that people probably don't notice is you kind of have the old guard, which sounds really weird to sit there and say. You have the old guard and Zach McVay being this offensive guru, with now the newest offensive guru in the league in Ben Johnson.
Yeah.
So you have a cool little matchup there. Obviously, they don't go up against each other, but it's going to be curious to see which offense executes better. I think Detroit has a very good chance to win this game, and if they are able to control the line of scrimmage and run the ball like they do, especially if you don't have Stan Laporta, and then you got really heavily rely on Jahmyr Gibbs and Montgomery.
Mm-hmm.
But the game's in Detroit, man. The storyline's there. The fans want it. I want it for their fans. I don't think Stafford's going to walk into a hostile environment. I think he's going to get a very warm welcome. Now, as the game progresses, that will change, but I don't think initially he's going to sit there and be booed left and right. Some fans are actually calling for a boycott of wearing his jersey, only to realize the majority of fans have a Matthew Stafford jersey.
So, can't really do
great
that.
Marketing if Detroit actually leaked it out by their marketing team to do that in order to sell more jerseys. But I don't know. I just want Detroit to win, man. It's just who wouldn't want it?
I feel weird. Like I had leaned towards the Rams at first, and I feel weird saying that. But also, Stafford's going to feel comfortable in that stadium. He's going to feel comfortable. He's not going to feel rattled or anything like that. It's a coin flip matchup, in my opinion. And I think a lot of general fans are going to look at the Rams and be like, "Oh, well, they weren't that great all season long, but they can make noise." And then we're not even talking about the guy that's in Detroit, Jared Goff. He can get his revenge against the team that traded him. Yeah, man.
Well,
yeah,
I think he already knows that when it comes to that trade, I mean, he's had a chip on his shoulder for the longest time, and if he wins this game, I think that proves that Detroit won that trade.
Yeah, well, Rams won that trade so far because they got the Super Bowl out of Stafford. But yeah, I think we're both rooting for the Lions on that one.
All right, we'll end it off one last game. We have kind of a battle of the cold and hot, right? We have Philadelphia actually heading over to Tampa Bay, right? Who would have thought the Eagles, 10 games in the season, would not be hosting a home game? But they are heading over to Tampa Bay and playing the Bucs. You got a team in the Eagles who have been struggling since Thanksgiving, going up against a Bucs team that honestly has nothing to lose. They've probably accomplished more than they were expected to accomplish, and I think that makes a trap game. And I don't know if the Eagles have just I don't know if they're doing a Muhammad Ali thing where they're just getting beaten up on purpose and then just explode in the playoffs out of nowhere. I don't see it.
Yeah,
but I don't know, man. I don't necessarily see the Bucs being a team that's going to make noise in the playoffs. So fuck it. Give me the Eagles. I think they'll make noise here, but I don't think whoever they play next round, it's done and over with.
I think the question mark isn't just the Eagles. Is Hurts okay? Is his finger okay? Can he throw the ball? Can he grip the ball? We don't know yet. We will find out as the week progresses. We're recording this on Wednesday night, so we'll find out by Saturday or Sunday if Hurts can play. I'm picking the Bucs, and my reasoning is one guy, Rachaad White. If he gets going in the run game and in the dump offs that Baker hits him with, he's a shifty back. Been a big fan of his. Even last year, I drafted him as a stash pick in fantasy football just because I just like the way the guy plays. And then the biggest thing is you have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin pressuring that terrible Eagles secondary. I think Baker will have a better game, and I'm going with the Bucs on that one.
Okay. Well, hey, that wraps up our wildcard games. long podcast, but we want to make sure we end this regular season correctly and get excited for the playoffs. So we are here. A few more podcasts left, so they'll get more and more interesting.
We have one thing that we need to wrap up.
Oh, okay. Just drop it on me without telling me.
Well, I mean, you should know because you're going to buy me steak.
For anyone that was following our weekly predictions, Shahan had a 3-game lead heading into this last week. Obviously, I had to take some bets or some chances. 1 out of the 4 chances worked. So I ended up losing the season behind 6 games, but that's just a caveat. So congrats, Shahan. 2 years in a row, you've won steak.
Yeah, it's
for anyone that's curious, we're going to Perry's. If you're invited, you're part of the cool club. If you're not, try again next year, dude.
Yeah,
it's like foreshadowing friendships. Everyone's like, "Am I in or am I out?"
Well, if I win next year, then you might be like, "Dude, screw this guy. He keeps winning, and I have to keep buying him steak dinners."
I may not even do the bet next year. May not have time to do the podcast next year with the baby coming. So who knows? There may be a surprise announcement at the end of the season. We'll see. Maybe I announce my retirement. We'll see.
Alrighty, guys. It's been the Talker Game Podcast. It's been a fun season so far. We got the playoffs with us. We had our playoff picks. I hope everyone enjoys the playoffs. I'm Shahan. That's Giff. We'll see you guys later.
Bye.